My name's David Woodall with the Emsdale Pastoral Charge in the United Church of Canada. This is the greatest promise that was ever made. I will be with you. It's whispered in the quiet of 1,000,000,000 hearts. It's a spark of life that forever eludes the scientist in their quest to recreate life. I will be with you. I will be with you always. The Lord said, "The time is coming when I will fulfill the promise that I made to the people of Israel and Judah. They will be rescued and will live in safety. There'll be strange things happening in the sun, the moon, and the stars. On earth, whole countries will be in despair, afraid of the roar of the sea and the raging tides. People will faint from fear as they wait for what is coming over the whole earth. For the powers in space will be driven from their courses, and then the Son of Man will appear. When these things begin to happen, stand up and raise your heads, because your salvation is near." This prophecy of Jeremiah was shared with a beaten and hopeless people. The Assyrians had totally annihilated the northern kingdom of Israel over 100 years ago, but they had left the southern kingdom of Judah alone. The Israelite survivors in this southern kingdom thought that so long as a descendant of King David ruled from the throne, God would never abandon them no matter what they did. And they did some awful things. You know, the kind of things that hate can do, that greed can do, the kind of things that happen when you think more about yourself than other people, the kind of things that might look like justice for you, but that impose hurt and harm on other people, the kind of things that rip people and communities apart. If you're in that mode of living, you will think things are all right. You can be smug and ignore the conditions of other people, but at some point, reality comes crashing in. The followers of the faith are never protected from their own foolishness, greed, and self-absorption. Jeremiah tried to warn the people, but they wouldn't listen. And then one day, the Babylonians came, and the kingdom of Judah was no more. The temple was destroyed. Jerusalem was destroyed. The leaders were executed. The people were dragged from their homes and watched them destroyed, and then they were marched for months on end until they were settled in the far reaches of the Babylonian Empire. This was what came to be known as the exile. Their homes were gone, their land was gone, the temple was destroyed, their future was gone. Jeremiah spoke to a people who saw little hope in their future. When everything is falling apart, it is hope that we need to hear about. It is hope that we need to find. When everything is falling apart, it sounds a lot like something we need these days. War shades the horizon. Climate change is a topic everyone ignores until the fires come and the winds howl and the waters rise. There's loneliness and homelessness, the struggle. And where is hope? Could there still be light when the darkness seems to be closing in and there's nowhere to go? And yet, there is a whisper that we still hear. The time is coming when I'll fulfill the promise that I made. I will be with you always. The greatest promise ever made. I wonder if we can rely on it. Do you think it's still true in a world that doubts the reality of spirituality and of the Spirit? I'll be with you always, to the ends of the earth, to the ends of time, forever. During the years that Jesus lived, there was a group known as the Stoics who regarded history as circular. They held that every 3,000 years or so, the world was consumed by a great catastrophe. And then it started all over again, and history repeated itself. This meant that history was going nowhere. The people were tramping around on a kind of eternal treadmill, each moment of progress eventually disappearing in a void of uselessness. The conception of history emerging at the time of Jesus was that history is going somewhere. History has a goal. And Jesus taught that that goal will be this magnificent spiritual awakening that encompasses the whole world. Justice, love, peace, kindness, and goodwill will sweep over humanity, and we will finally be in the home that we've always longed for, the world God intended to come to pass. Now, today, we're in a period of transition, of struggle, of hope, and doubt. We're in a time of war and peace. Maybe in our lifetimes, we will never see the big picture that Jesus taught about. And perhaps all of human history for all times will always be in this transition period. But when we look closely, the spirit of creation is at work. We see the hand of God, by whatever name you wish to use, in the events of human life. I see the hand of God in my own life, and I am sure that you see the hand of God in your life as well. There is a movement going on. I see it in myself. I've changed so much from that gangly teenager that I have vague memories of. I see it in the world. We are going somewhere. The people of Judah were losing hope. For them, history seemed to have stopped, exiled, with no hope of returning home. Matthew wrote to the people of Jerusalem and the early Christians who had both lost all hope. They were living in the days after the Maccabean rebellion. Rome had crushed them. The Romans had torn the temple down. The symbol of their future was gone. After the exile, the returning Israelites, when they returned hope for a future, they built for a future. And now, so many hundreds of years later, it has all been destroyed one more time. For the Christian church, Christ had not returned like he'd promised. Why not? For the Christian church, Christ didn't return. For the Israelites, God was gone. You see, it was a time of no hope. And the reality is that sometimes we lose hope. Things don't work out the way we thought they would. Words and actions tear each other apart instead of keeping us close. Missiles destroy hospitals. Social media destroys people's lives. The fires come. The winds blow. We hear that everything is broken, and we know it's not true. And we think, what a sad message to hear over and over again that everything's broken. And whole groups of people attack their neighbors just because they're different. There are harsh realities facing our world today, and sometimes we lose hope. A newspaper reporter once wrote, "December is the month of tarnished dreams. The year brightly begun in hope finally comes to the last month, with most of the dreams dashed to pieces. Businesses have struggled and failed. Marriages have ended. Loved ones buried. Children have rebelled and disappointed parents, and parents have let down their children. Illness has hit and run, leaving weakness and low spirits. Temptations have taken their toll. The year begun brightly in January comes beaten and weary to December." That article sounds an awful lot like our scriptures. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. But then in our scriptures, there's this next line that emerges, and it's thrilling to hear. And it's what is whispered in our hearts. Then the Son of Man will appear, coming in a cloud with great power and glory. When these things begin to happen, stand up and raise your heads, because your salvation is near. These days of brokenness, hardship, wars, and fears are not the final word. We will not be cowed by hopelessness. We will stand up and raise our heads. Light overcomes darkness. Hope beats strongly in the human heart. Each of us has a solid spiritual core which overcomes those moments of loss and despair and wailing. Despite of all the awful things that happen deep down inside of us, sometimes so quietly we can't even hear it, hope beats. Don't be afraid. I will be with you always to the end of the age. Next Sunday is the first Sunday of Advent, a time of preparation, anticipation, and renewal. Advent is about getting ready. It's about saying that history is going somewhere. It is about rekindling hope. For us in a world that seems to have abandoned God, Advent is saying that God has not abandoned us. God is still here. It's the greatest promise ever made. I will be with you always.